You open the door and step into the dream that was sold in magazines and jingles, into the glowing promise of the 1950s home. The light is different here. It falls across pastel walls in shades of mint green and lemon yellow, shines on polished chrome handles and sparkling new appliances. The air smells faintly of detergent, floor polish, and something else. Something chemical and sharp that you cannot quite name, but that makes the back of your throat ache. The house is not just a shelter. It is a showroom, a trophy of progress, a polished box in which the future is supposed to unfold. And yet, as you walk further in, you begin to sense that the dream has teeth hidden behind its painted smile. Before you drift off, do me a small favor and tap the like button and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment telling me where you are listening from and what time it is for you. The kitchen is the first place to dazzle. Counters gleam beneath bright lighting, spotless and smooth. A new refrigerator hums in the corner, larger than the ice boxes of your parents' generation, its metal skin cold to the touch, its compartments filled with neatly arranged jars and boxes. There are colors everywhere: pastel enamel on the oven door, shiny turquoise on the blender, pink plastic containers stacked on shelves. Housewives in advertisements beam with pride, pointing to spotless stoves, promising that these machines will make work lighter, meals easier, life better. Yet beneath the polish lurks a darker truth. The enamel on those counters is laced with lead. The paint that brightens the cabinets flakes invisibly into food. The plastic that cradles leftovers leaches chemicals into tomorrow's dinner. Every promise of convenience carries a shadow. You sit at the kitchen table, its formica top gleaming, the edges rimmed with shiny chrome. It looks indestructible, modern, made for the future. But the glue that holds it together releases formaldehyde into the air, invisible, inescapable. You breathe it in without knowing, night after night, year after year, until headaches and sickness creep into the walls like silent visitors. The children colouring pictures at the table, crayons scattered, papers wrinkled, breathe the same air. The dream is poisoning them softly, quietly, patiently. Step into the living room, and the pride of the household sits like a throne. The new television set. Its wooden cabinet gleams with varnish, the screen glowing faintly, even before it warms. A square window to the wider world. Families cluster around it, eyes shining, ears tuned to the tinny voices of sitcoms and news broadcasts. Fathers in suits and mothers in pearls settle onto couches, children sprawled on rugs, all hypnotized by the flicker of moving light. They do not see the heat building inside the cabinet, the wires fraying, the dust gathering near the tubes. They do not know that the glowing box can become a furnace, that in the time it takes to step into the kitchen for another drink, flames can eat through varnish and fill the room with choking smoke. The television is progress, but it is also a trap that waits for the right spark. The couch they sit on is new too. Floral patterns stitched across cushions that are softer than anything their grandparents owned. They boast about the foam that makes it so springy, about the new materials that promise comfort and style. They do not realize that the foam is polyurethane, a substance that burns with the fury of oil when touched by a stray ember. A dropped cigarette, a candle knocked over, and the living room becomes a pile. The comfort that seemed like luxury becomes a coffin. In the bedrooms, glamour awaits. Nylon curtains flutter at the window, their sheen catching the morning light. Rayon bedspreads shimmer silky and inviting. Closets hang heavy with dresses that glisten, nightgowns that promise elegance even in sleep, but beauty has its price. Nylon does not burn the way cotton does. It melts, clinging to skin, fusing to flesh. A woman leaning too close to a stove, a candle left on a nightstand, a spark from faulty wiring, and the fabric that promised beauty turns into a second skin of fire, impossible to peel away, searing deeper with every second. What was meant to make women radiant instead makes them vulnerable, and the advertisements that promised luxury never mentioned the burns. The bathroom too glows with newness. Tile in cheerful pinks and blues, fixtures that shine, cabinets lined with brightly coloured tins and bottles. Cleaning powders promise miracles, drain openers boast of strength, pesticides smile from cheerful packaging. They sit side by side with sugar and flour, as if danger does not belong in the home. A child's hand reaches for a tin, painted with bright colours, mistaking it for candy, and by the time the mistake is realised, the damage is done. Convenience comes in cheerful colours, but the labels do not warn, and safety is never guaranteed. Even the machines that seem to promise life itself can betray. The new gas heater in the corner hisses quietly, its warmth filling the room. Families gather around it in winter, grateful for its heat. But what they cannot see is the gas without smell, the carbon monoxide pooling slowly in the corners, creeping silently up their bodies as they sleep. They breathe it in unaware, until breath stops altogether. Morning never comes for those who trusted the heater too much. The children's rooms hold the cruelest paradox. Toys fill the shelves, chemistry sets, complete with uranium ore samples, BB guns packaged in cheerful boxes, cat pistols loaded with real powder. Children laugh, experiment, pretend. They play at science, they play at war, but sometimes the play ends with explosions, burns, sickness. Childhood in the 1950s is marketed as adventure, but behind the cardboard boxes and cheerful advertising lies danger dressed in disguise. The dinner table is no safer. The chicken roasted in the oven might carry salmonella. The canned goods on the shelves may bulge with botulism. Margarine spreads bright yellow across bread, its colour forced by artificial dyes, never tested for safety. Plates gleam with abundance, the promise of post-war prosperity, but sometimes the food is already poisoned before it ever reaches the mouth. Electricity, too, promises miracles. Toasters that brown bread in minutes, washing machines that churn clothing clean, hair dryers that hum with power. They gleam, they dazzle, they save time. But wires fray, insulation cracks, switches short. A hand reaching for toast might meet a jolt of current that burns through flesh and bone. A washing machine left unattended might spark, catching curtains or rugs, turning labour-saving into life-taking. Step back, and the whole house glitters with progress. Neon signs flicker outside, pastel walls shine within, chrome gleams from every corner. It is the picture of modernity, the triumph of industry, the promise of a brighter tomorrow. But you can see what others cannot. You see the poisons in the paint, the fire in the foam, the sickness in the food, the smoke in the television, the gas in the heater, the silent chain hidden behind every appliance. The dream home is not a dream at all. It is a glittering coffin, lined with the very inventions meant to make life better, inventions that instead whisper promises while plotting their betrayal. The advertisements never told the truth. They promised safety, abundance, comfort, glamour. They gave death in disguise. And as the lantern glow of the 1950s dream fades in your mind, you realize the truth that families back then could never admit. Progress moved faster than caution, and the homes that promised to cradle them in safety were already sharpening their knives. The television hums like a living thing, a low vibration you can feel in your bones before the screen even warms. In the 1950s, it is the crown jewel of the living room, the throne around which every family assembles. The father sinks into his chair after work, jacket loosened, tie still knotted. The mother sits primly, pearls glowing in the glow of the tube. Children sprawl on the carpet, their chins in their hands, waiting for the black and white dream to flicker into being. It is progress incarnate, moving pictures in your own home, voices drifting through the cabinet like magic, the world compressed into a box of glowing glass. The set promises connection, modernity, glamour. It does not promise the fire that waits in its belly. The television is heavy, a hulking cabinet of wood and glass, its back bristling with tubes and wires. Inside, electricity hums hot, fragile connections, straining as current surges through parts designed too quickly, tested too little. Dust gathers where it should not, and heat rises with each passing hour. No one notices. They are entranced by cowboys galloping across the plains, by comedians cracking jokes through static laughter, by presidents delivering speeches as if they stand in the very room. The family leans closer, captivated, while the machine grows hotter, its insides glowing like embers. Advertisements called it the hearth of the modern home, replacing the fireplace as the heart of family life. And in a way, they were right. Many of these sets burned hotter than any hearth. Wires cracked, insulation frayed, plastic warped, and in an instant the comforting glow turned into flames that leapt from vents, feeding on dust, curtains, rugs. One spark, one sudden flare, and the dream became a nightmare. Families woke in the night, not to the laughter of sitcoms, but to the roar of fire, the taste of smoke filling their throats, the glow of their television, now the glow of their destruction. There were stories always whispered, never printed in the advertisements. A family asleep upstairs, the television left on standby, its tubes glowing faintly in the dark. It smouldered quietly, feeding on itself, until flames swallowed the cabinet, spread to the drapes, climbed the walls. By the time the family woke, the staircase was a furnace, the air unbreathable. The television was found later, melted into a grotesque lump, its glass shattered, its promise fulfilled in the worst way. The sets were status symbols, objects of pride. Neighbors gathered to watch, bringing snacks, crowding into living rooms that glowed like theaters. No one wanted to admit the danger. No one wanted to confess that the box they had worked so hard to afford might kill them. When fires did happen, they were called accidents, a faulty plug, careless wiring, dust left to gather. The machine itself was rarely blamed. Blame is not profitable. Blame does not sell. You imagined sitting there in the darkened living room, only the flicker of the television lighting your face. The hum grows louder. The air feels thicker, warmer. The set crackles faintly, a sound hidden beneath the dialogue on screen. Then a pop, sharp as a gunshot, glass shattering in the back, smoke pouring out in a sudden plume. At first it is only a thread, curling lazily upward, but soon the smell of burning plastic fills the room, acrid and suffocating. You rise, panic sharpening your movements, but already the flames have found the curtains, dry and eager. Fire races up the fabric like lightning, leaps to the rug, the couch, the polished wood. The dream room becomes an inferno. You scramble for the door, the children crying, the mother clutching pearls that do nothing to protect her, the father coughing against the smoke. The machine that once promised joy has turned against you, its final show a performance of fire and ruin. Engineers knew, of course. Some whispered warnings about overheating, about designs rushed to market in the frenzy of competition, but demand was insatiable. Everyone wanted a television. To wait was to lose profit, and profit always spoke louder than caution. And so the sets were sold, box after box, gleaming in storefronts, glowing in living rooms, their dangers disguised behind polished wood and advertisements promising family togetherness. After the fires, after the deaths, manufacturers promised improvements, new insulation, safer wiring, better designs, and some were safer. It is true, but the damage had already been done, the lesson already carved into the walls of blackened houses. Progress had once again outpaced safety, and families had paid the price. You think of those families now, staring into the flickering screen, never imagining that the box before them contained not only entertainment, but a hidden fuse. You think of the children who begged for one, who pressed their noses against store windows, dazzled by the future glowing inside. They could not know that the future they longed for burned hot enough to consume their homes. The television was a marvel. Yes, it connected the world, brought images and voices into homes that had once been isolated, but it was also a betrayer, a hearth that turned on its worshippers, a shrine that demanded offerings of lives and houses. It was the perfect symbol of the 1950s dream, dazzling, modern, irresistible, and fatally flawed. You sit again in the living room, the set humming softly, its glow painting shadows across the walls. You know what waits behind its polished face, the heat building, the wires straining, the fire hungry, and you cannot look away, because this was the 1950s, a time when progress promised light, but sometimes delivered only flame. The living room is supposed to be a sanctuary, cushions soft enough to swallow you whole, fabric bright with floral patterns, a place to sink at the end of the day while the television glows. In the 1950s, the couch is no longer a stiff wooden frame padded with horsehair. It is modern now, thick with polyurethane foam, light, cheap, comfortable. It springs beneath you like a cloud. It cradles you in its arms. It feels safe. It feels permanent. But comfort has teeth, and in these rooms it waits with open jaws. Polyurethane foam is a marvel, they say, a product of chemical ingenuity, born in the laboratories of war and rebranded for peace. It is flexible, springy, forgiving, everything furniture had never been. Families rejoice in its abundance, in its affordability. You can furnish a whole living room with it. Fill your home with the smell of newness, that faint chemical sweetness that seeps from the cushions and lingers in the air. No one asks why the air feels thicker, why headaches creep after long evenings on the sofa. No one wonders what happens when the foam is kissed by fire. The spark is small, a match forgotten, a cigarette dropped, a candle left too close to the armrest. In another age, fabric might smoulder, smoke a little, give warning enough for action, but polyurethane does not smoulder. It erupts. One moment a spark, the next a wall of flame roaring up the side of the couch, devouring fabric, filling the room with smoke black and choking. It burns hotter than coal, hotter than wood, hotter than anything you have ever seen in a living room. Flames leap across the cushions, climb the curtains, lick the walls. The couch becomes an inferno, and the room becomes a trap. There are stories, whispered in newspapers and firehouse records. Families asleep, the father's cigarette slipping from his fingers into the cushion below, the house silent. Until it wasn't. By the time the mother stirred to the smell of smoke, the couch was already a furnace, the room already a box of fire. Escape was sometimes possible, but often not. The foam released toxic gases, thick clouds of cyanide and carbon monoxide, filling lungs faster than feet could carry bodies to safety. Survivors staggered from their homes, their clothes burned, their lungs seared, coughing black smoke until silence claimed them. The furniture that promised comfort had become the very agent of death. Advertisements never mentioned this. They spoke of style, of ease, of the joy of affordable luxury. The glossy photographs showed smiling families lounging, magazines open, children sprawled across cushions. They did not show the blackened frames of couches found in ashes, the melted lumps of foam clinging to what once were walls, the bodies carried out by firefighters whose masks could not block the stench of chemical fire. The truth would not sell, and so the truth was buried. You sit on one of these couches in your mind, sinking into its softness, hearing the television hum, feeling the cigarette between your fingers. You let it slip. Just for a moment, just enough for ash to fall. The cushion drinks it up greedily, and before you can even rise, the flame has blossomed, racing faster than thought. The room is smoke, the air is poison, the glow is unbearable. You cough, stumble, choke, but the door is too far, the fire too fast. This is how quickly comfort turns into a coffin. The irony is sharp. After the war, people longed for safety, for peace, for the simple pleasure of resting without fear. Industry gave them couches stuffed with danger, chairs upholstered with death, mattresses that smoldered until they exploded. The home became the battlefield no one expected, the fire consuming not factories or tanks but nurseries and living rooms. And yet people kept buying. How could they not? The phone was cheap, the couches stylish, the advertisements irresistible. To refuse was to admit fear, and the 1950s did not want fear. The decade demanded optimism, demanded belief in progress, demanded trust in the miracles of chemistry and industry. And so families bought couches, filled their homes with them, and sat proudly upon them, never suspecting they were perched on tinder, waiting for a match. When the fire came, it left nothing untouched. It burned too hot too fast, leaving only blackened walls and questions no one wanted to ask. Why had progress outpaced safety? Why had beauty disguised danger so completely? Why had comfort become so fatal? The answers were the same then as now. Profit first, safety later, if at all. And so the living room remained a trap, disguised as luxury. The killer couch sat quietly in homes across the country, waiting for one mistake, one spark, one breath too close to flame. It waited in silence, because silence was its greatest ally. You rise from the couch in your mind, the cushions still warm from your body, and look back at it. It looks innocent, inviting, harmless. It is upholstered in flowers, bright and cheery. Children bounce on it. Couples sink into it. Families gather on it. But now you know what hides inside. What chemical promise lies waiting. You know the truth. The advertisements never said. You know that sometimes the most dangerous inventions do not look dangerous at all. They look comfortable. They look like home. The glamour of the 1950s closet is undeniable. Fabrics shimmer in the lamplight, slips and gowns hang in rows like treasures waiting to be chosen. For the first time, ordinary families can afford synthetic luxury. Nylon, rayon, acetate, names that sound like the future, born in laboratories, spun into threads that promise elegance and ease. Dresses swish with a silky sheen, stockings gleam like glass. Nightgowns slip like water over the skin. Advertisements gush with promises. No wrinkles, no ironing, no fuss. Beauty has never been so affordable, so accessible. But beauty, like comfort, hides its cost. You picture it. A young woman leaning over a stove, her nylon blouse catching a spark from a frying pan. A child brushing against a candle at the dinner table, their rayon pajama sleeve brushing the flame. In another era, cotton would char slowly, wool would smolder, buying precious seconds to act. But nylon and rayon do not smolder. They ignite. They melt. The flames devour fabric, and the fabric fuses to skin, liquefying into a plastic layer that burns deeper, hotter, sealing wounds so tightly that surgeons cannot peel it away. The glamour turns to agony in the blink of an eye. There were stories whispered in hospital wards, told quietly by nurses who scrubbed melted nylon from charred flesh. A woman rushed in after her nightdress caught fire from a cigarette. By the time help came, the fabric had already fused to her body, clinging like molten wax. The burns were not surface wounds. They were deep, chemical and thermal combined, almost impossible to treat. Survivors lived with scars that twisted skin into grotesque shapes, reminders of how quickly elegance betrayed them. The advertisements never showed this. They showed models twirling in nylon skirts, their smiles wide, their movements light. They called nylon miracle fabric, rayon fashion's wonder. They promised a future free of ironing, a closet free of drudgery. They never mentioned the way the fabric shrank from heat, the way it curled and liquefied when touched by flame. The glossy pages never told mothers to beware when standing near the stove, never told fathers to watch the ash of their pipes, never told children that their pajamas were a hazard. Progress sells best when it says nothing of danger. You can almost feel the fabric now, slick under your fingers, light on your skin. It feels harmless, even luxurious, but in your mind's eye, you hold a candle to it, and the truth is revealed. The flame leaps instantly, the fabric curling black, dripping molten plastic. It drips onto your hand, searing through skin, the smell acrid, sharp, unforgettable. You recoil, but the fabric clings, tightening, binding, becoming one with your flesh. That is the reality hidden beneath the shine. Hospitals filled with such accidents in the 1950s. Burn wards crowded with victims of their own closets. Children crying as rayon pajamas melted onto their legs. Women screaming as nylon slips fused to their arms. Men scarred by acetate shirts ignited by cigarettes. Doctors learned quickly that these burns were unlike the ones they had treated before. They were deeper, crueler, deadlier. And yet the fabrics kept selling, kept filling closets, kept promising beauty and convenience. Because the 1950s was a decade in love with progress, and progress did not pause for caution. The irony is thick. These fabrics were marketed as symbols of modernity, of liberation from old burdens. No more ironing, no more wrinkles, no more heaviness of wool or linen. Women were told they could be elegant at all times. Men were told they could dress sharp without effort. Children were dressed in pajamas that looked stylish and new. The fabrics were supposed to free people from the past. Instead, they bound them in a new kind of danger, one no one saw until it was too late. You imagine the glamour of a dinner party in the 1950s. The room glows with light. Women in shimmering gowns, men in sharp suits, children peeking from the staircase in glossy pajamas. Laughter fills the air. Glasses clink, and then a candle tips. A spark jumps. A sleeve brushes flame. In seconds the laughter turns to screams. The shimmering gown a torch. The elegant nightdress a cage of fire. Guests scramble. Water spills. Panic erupts. The glamour dissolves in smoke and agony. The illusion is burned away, leaving only the raw truth that the very clothes meant to make people shine could just as easily consume them. The closets of the 1950s glittered with promise, but behind every nylon slip, every rayon dress, every acetate nightgown was the shadow of fire waiting to claim it. You cannot separate the beauty from the danger. They are woven together in every thread, every sheen, every shimmer. To wear these fabrics was to gamble, to place your faith in progress, and hope that progress would not betray you. And so the closets remained full, the advertisements continued, the fabrics kept selling. Women still twirled in their nylon skirts, men still smoked in rayon shirts, children still slept in glossy pajamas, because the dream was stronger than the truth, and the truth was too frightening to face. But you see it now. You see the glamour as it truly was, not a promise of beauty, but a warning of how quickly beauty can burn. Open the cupboard under the kitchen sink in a tidy 1950s home, and you do not find just brushes and cloths. You find a hidden armory, bright tins and bottles lined up like soldiers, their colours cheerful, their promises bold, a powder that makes drains run clear, a liquid that whitens clothes, a spray that kills every bug in sight. The packaging is loud and friendly, reds, blues, greens, all printed with smiling housewives and slogans that sparkle with confidence. It looks harmless, even helpful. It looks like progress poured into a bottle, but every container is also a trap, waiting for the wrong hand, the wrong mouth, the wrong moment. There are no child-proof caps here. No stern warning labels, no skulls and crossbones shouting danger, just a glossy slogan telling you to trust, to use freely, to believe in the magic of chemistry. Housewives, encouraged by advertisements, stack these products beside flour and sugar, tuck them onto the same shelves that hold tea and coffee. Why not? The tins look almost the same. The powders are just as white. To a tired eye or a curious hand, the difference can vanish in an instant. You imagine a child, 4 years old, padding barefoot across the kitchen floor in the afternoon. He opens the cupboard door with ease. He sees a tin with a bright red label, cheerful letters declaring it a miracle cleaner. He does not know letters yet, but he knows colour, he knows shape. It looks like powdered sugar. He dips his fingers in, licks them, and the miracle becomes poison. The scream comes too late, the powder already burning down his throat, the chemical already tearing at his stomach. In the hospital, doctors do what they can, but chemicals designed to dissolve clogs do not forgive a child's body, and another family learns the price of convenience, disguised as safety. Even adults were not immune. Housewives, encouraged to keep homes spotless to prove their modernity, mixed powders into stronger concoctions, combining bleach with ammonia in the hope of brighter whites, never knowing the gas it created could burn their lungs from the inside out. Farmers sprayed pesticides on their gardens, breathing the mist, coughing through the summer, their skin blotched with chemical burns. Advertisements promised miracle harvests, miracle cleanliness, miracle homes. The miracles often ended with coughing fits, rashes, dizziness, sometimes silence. The 1950s trusted chemistry the way earlier generations trusted religion. It had ended the war. After all, it had given nylon stockings, miracle plastics, miracle drugs. Why should a little powder under the sink be anything but progress? And so cupboards across America and beyond were filled with lethal dusts and liquids, their danger masked by cheerful packaging. A spill on the floor became a patch of poison invisible to bare feet. A mistaken spoonful became a death sentence disguised as breakfast. Hospitals began to fill with the victims of the cupboard, children convulsing after swallowing drain cleaner, mothers pale and gasping after inhaling bleach fumes, fathers poisoned by pesticides handled bare-handed in the garden. Doctors learned to recognize the signs: burns on the lips, stomachs corroded from within, lungs filled with fluid from invisible gas. They treated what they could, but often all they could do was watch. For some poisons there were no antidotes. For others, the damage was already done by the time the ambulance arrived. And yet the tins kept selling, the labels kept smiling, the advertisements grew louder, more confident, promising that a modern housewife could control her home with a single product, that progress meant nothing was too strong to tackle. Fear did not sell, but trust did, and trust killed. Imagine standing in that 1950s kitchen now, the light falling softly across linoleum floors, pastel cupboards lined with cheerful paint. You open the cupboard under the sink, and the smell drifts out, sharp, chemical, stinging your eyes. Inside the tins wait, lined up neatly. You know what they contain now. You know the powders are caustic, the sprays toxic, the liquids corrosive. You know that one mistake could turn this cheerful kitchen into a death scene. But in the 1950s, people did not see it that way. They saw promise, convenience, the glow of modernity. They did not see the coffins hidden in bright red tins. The kitchen, the heart of the home, became its most dangerous room. Bread baked in the oven, children laughed at the table, mothers ironed clothes by the window, and beneath it all, under the sink, a collection of poisons waited, silent and patient. Progress had delivered its miracles. It had also delivered its killers, and they came disguised as friends. The winter nights of the 1950s were colder than you remember them, sharper, biting through thin walls of post-war houses built in haste for booming suburbs. Families huddled together in living rooms, wrapped in blankets, listening to the wind scratch at the windows. But there was a new invention, a solution to the cold, sleek, and modern, humming quietly in the corner. The gas heater, they called it, compact, efficient, warm, a miracle of modern engineering. You strike a match, light the blue flame, and the room begins to thaw. It is progress, it is comfort, it is safety, or so it seems. What you cannot see is what fills the air alongside the warmth. Carbon monoxide, colorless, odorless, silent. A ghost of gas that moves through the room without trace. It does not burn the eyes like smoke. It does not stink like sulfur. It is invisible and patient, and it binds to blood more eagerly than oxygen. Each breath feels like relief, like comfort, like life returning. In truth, each breath carries you closer to stillness. Families trusted these heaters as they trusted all the promises of the decade. They left them running overnight, filling bedrooms with heat, tucking children under quilts, while the hiss of gas soothed them to sleep. Morning did not always come. Parents never woke, children never stirred, and the heater hummed on in the corner, blue flame steady, betraying no sign of the death it had delivered. Neighbors found them days later, bodies pale and peaceful, as if they had simply drifted too far into a dream. Doctors knew the signs: cherry red lips, skin flushed strangely as if touched by fever, lungs still but bodies otherwise unmarked. The invisible poison had done its work, leaving no smell, no flame, no trace. Police reports called it accidental, tragic, unforeseen. But it was not unforeseen. Engineers had warned of poor ventilation, of the need for windows cracked open, for chimneys cleaned. Warnings were buried under glossy advertisements of families laughing in warm rooms, snow falling outside, not a window cracked, not a breath of danger admitted. Safety slowed sales, and in the 1950s, sales always won. You imagine the scene now, a father carrying the heater into the living room, proud of his purchase, proud of the comfort he can provide. He sets it down, lights it, watches his children gather closer, their cheeks glowing with warmth. He smiles, thinking of progress, of how far the world has come. He does not see the gas thickening in the corners, curling into lungs. He does not know that as the night deepens, their breaths grow shallower, their pulses slower, their dreams longer. By dawn silence will reign, and the heater will still burn, innocent in appearance, guilty in truth. Carbon monoxide is called the silent killer for a reason. There is no warning, no pain, no struggle, just dizziness. A little nausea, then sleep. Sleep that deepens into stillness. For many the deaths looked peaceful, almost gentle, but the peace was a lie. The gas suffocated them from the inside out, binding to blood cells, starving the brain, stealing breath by stealth. Survivors who were pulled from the brink described confusion, weakness, limbs that refused to move. Some never fully recovered. Their minds fogged, their memories burned away, and still the heaters sold. Stores displayed them proudly, polished and gleaming. Advertisements showed mothers knitting by their glow, fathers reading newspapers, children playing on rugs without a shiver. The invisible death was never mentioned, not in print, not on radio, not in the instructions folded inside the box. The truth was whispered only in hospital corridors, in firehouse reports, in the grim statistics of winter. The heaters were not the only culprits. Gas stoves leaked, ovens hissed, faulty pipes carried poison into homes too poor to repair them. The very infrastructure of progress turned traitor, pumping silent killers into kitchens and bedrooms. In cities across the world, the same story repeated, whole families gone overnight, neighbors baffled, officials cautious with their words. The 1950s was a decade that wanted to believe in safety, and so safety was assumed, even as death crept quietly through the cracks. You sit in the living room now, the heater humming in the corner, its flame a soft blue glow. The children lean against you, drowsy, their heads heavy on your arm. The warmth is comforting, lulling, a relief from the bite of winter. Your own eyes grow heavy, your breath slows, the air feels thick but pleasant. You tell yourself it is just sleep, that the room is cozy, that you are safe. You do not see the truth. You do not feel the gas. You do not know that this sleep is the last. And outside, the snow continues to fall, muffling the world, burying the house in silence. Morning will not come here. The heater has seen to that. The lid of the toy chest lifts on its little brass hinges, and the smell that rises is not sugar or sawdust, but something sharper, a ghost of gunpowder and solvent and tin. The 1950s sold childhood as a parade of miracles, and so the chest is crowded with miracles. Chemistry sets with trays of powders you cannot pronounce, gleaming BB guns that promise perfect aim, cat pistols with tiny red rolls of explosive dots, rockets that really fly, kits that ask you to wire bulbs to batteries, and maybe to the wall, if you're feeling bold. Paper instructions smile up at you in cheerful fonts, each page a dare. The adults, proud of the new prosperity, buy freely. The children, newly crowned with the right to experiment, set about discovering which miracles bite back. You start with the chemistry set, because the lid says science in block letters as big as a billboard. There is a magnifying glass, a spirit lamp, test tubes in a tin rack, a blue book full of recipes that sound like nursery rhymes rewritten by a pharmacist, copper sulfate, the color of rain on steel, potassium permanganate that stains your fingers royal, ammonium something that smells like a dare. In the deluxe kits there is even a tiny vial of uranium ore, sealed with wax, the label jaunty as a carnival barker. The box tells you to hold it to the light, see how it glitters, and think of atomic power lighting cities while you, 8 years old and solemn as a professor, hold a sample of the future in your palm. No one tells you that dust likes lungs, that some lights can burn from the inside out, that the spirit lamp licks alcohol fire so clean you do not see it until it has found your sleeve. You read the first experiment out loud, like a spell. Add a pinch of this, a teaspoon of that. Watch the liquid bloom from clear to blue to green. It works. Of course it works. You grin until your face hurts. Then you look for the experiments the book wrote, cautiously, the ones that whisper rather than shout. For older boys, it says about the one with the foaming volcano that overflows in a fizzing crown. With adult supervision, it says about the demonstration of gun cotton. Soak cotton in 2 clear liquids and watch it vanish in a flash when touched by flame. The supervision is often a myth. The adults are in the other room, proud of how quietly you play, trusting the bright box that came from a respectable store. Your hands are small but certain. You measure, you mix, you learn that curiosity has a sound, a soft hiss before a pop, a fizz before a rush, and that on some afternoons the sound is followed by a scream. The cap pistols are safer. Everyone insists. The red paper rolls look like candy with freckles. You feed the strip into the toy gun, and every squeeze of the trigger rewards you with a crack, a puff of smoke that smells like parades and summers and something faintly metallic. But caps like to be more. Boys unroll them and rub them with pennies to make a brighter spark, or stack them under a hammer to feel the satisfying bang in the wrist. The instructions say never strike with a stone. The instructions are dull and stones are everywhere. On certain evenings, a group of friends builds a lean fortress of bricks and then dares each other to pound a whole roll at once. The explosion is a bloom of noise and heat. A scrap of paper once harmless sticks to a cheek and burns a freckle into a scar that will outlast the fashion for crew cuts and saddle shoes. Then there are the BB guns, tin soldiers of modernity. The ads put them in careful hands, supervised by a father in a cardigan who never blinks. The real world puts them in packs of boys who have learned the mathematics of daring. 1 pump becomes 2, 2 becomes 3, and soon the metal sphere leaps from the muzzle with the kind of authority that breaks bottles and knocks down birds. No one aims for eyes, not on purpose, but eyes are where wonder lives, and wonder looks straight down the barrel. The sound a BB makes hitting bone is small, like tapping a ring on a table. The sound of a mother's voice afterward, raw as a rope burn, never quite leaves the house. Someone tapes the carton shut for a week. Someone else learns to shoot alone where no one can say no. Tin toys hum on the floor, their clockwork guts generous with spark. Trains ride round and round a track that grows hotter if a transformer asks too much from the wall. Solder joints glitter along seams the way teeth glitter in a smile. But solder can be lead, and lead knows how to travel from finger to mouth to brain, building small invisible cities inside synapses where words later will try to drive and find the road closed. The paint is bright because bright sells. Bright stays bright because chemists made a bargain with heavy metals. Toddlers put the promised future in their mouths and taste pennies for years without knowing why school feels like a hill that never stops rising. Kites carry boys toward the sky because how could they not? It is not enough to run beneath clouds. Better to fly something into them. The kit comes with a spool of string, thin as the line between wisdom and luck. The pamphlet only suggests that metal wire improves performance. The pamphlet cannot imagine thunderheads rising like cathedrals on an afternoon that tastes of rain. A kid ties on the wire because the older kid says so, because the older kid always says so, because the page in the comic book showed a hero with a kite, and the hero lived to smile on the last panel. The sky clears its throat with a far-off drum. The line thrums. Somewhere a transformer notices a new path to ground and takes it. Afterwards the wire is black and curly, and the smell in the air is pennies again, only this time it does not mean paint. Do-it-yourself rockets promise reach, powder in a cardboard tube, a fin of balsa, a nose cone as neat as a promise. The kit says to go to a field, and you go to a field, but the field is near fences, and fences near houses, and houses near roofs. You read the angle wrong by a little, and the tube launches true, and then truer, hissing across the sky, like a bee with a grievance, until it discovers shingles are not flameproof. 2 minutes later, the neighborhood gathers with buckets and questions. The rocket lies right where it fell, nose cone stuck through tar paper, like a toy sword in a soft stone. The father who runs the fastest also owns the biggest ladder and the quietest anger. Electric kits are the friendliest killers. They arrive in boxes organized like dreams, springs for terminals, wires as bright as veins, little lamps that glow on command. You learn circuits the way other kids learn prayers. Close this, open that, watch the current loop like a train around a Christmas tree. The instructions have a final page that mentions mains power as if it were just another battery that never runs out. The plug is right there. The wall is right there. The fork in the kitchen drawer is right there. Shining, a universal key. Adults call the hospital, and later the hardware store. Someone writes a letter to the company that sells the kit and receives a leaflet about safety that looks like a valentine. Not every danger carries a spark. Some come as dust. A child shakes glitter onto glue and inhales. A little sister watches snow of mica and aluminum settle in her hair and laughs about it for 2 hours and coughs about it for 2 days. A boy melts plastic airplane wings with the tip of a match to shape the air better, breathing sweet smoke that carries suggestions for how lungs might like to be years from now. A stamp kit includes solvents in bottles with skulls the size of freckles. The skulls look like pirates, and pirates are exciting, and so the bottle tips. Parents say be careful the way people say amen, habit, hope, punctuation at the end of a sentence. They mean it and they do not know how to enforce it, because the house is a museum of promises. The Saturday morning commercials have told them that clever children need clever toys, that post-war brains are hungry, that curiosity must be fed. Even the teachers approve. The school library keeps a copy of the Golden Book of Chemistry Experiments on a shelf reachable by anyone who can spell G. The librarian smiles when you check it out and says, "Isn't it wonderful?" You nod. You do not tell her that page 37 is the one that made the smell in the garage yesterday. When injuries come, they come in moods. Springs. A finger pinched purple by the mouth of a tin robot that snaps shut when a gear slips. Burns. A perfect mirror of a cap pistol barrel stenciled on a palm from a roll of caps crushed under a rock to prove something that needed no proof. Cuts a bright hinge across the ankle from a stamped metal edge not filed at the factory, because speed is a factory's true god. Between the incidents there is joy, real and honest. A vinegar and baking soda rocket arcs beautifully and lands in a field of dandelions. A crystal garden grows overnight on a pipe cleaner like frost inside a fairy tale. A circuit lights a lamp and someone shouts it worked and means it in the one way that matters. The decade believes in itself. It believes that danger is merely a teacher with rough hands. It believes that boys who break things mend faster, and that mending is a kind of patriotism. It believes that a little exposure to hazard hardens the skin and straightens the spine. Maybe in some cases it is even right. But belief cannot change the chemistry of powder, or the appetite of flame, or the invisible persistence of metals inside blood. Belief cannot put a lens back into an eye. Belief cannot press the ridges of a fingerprint smooth again. Sometimes the newspapers tell a truth so bald it blushes. A small item on page 7 mentions a fire linked to juvenile rocketry. The photograph shows a neat circle of black where grass used to be, and a house with one eye closed by soot. The reporter quotes a fireman who says the boys were lucky and uses the word prank because the word experiment tastes too much like approving the lesson. The next day the toy store sells 3 more kits because boys cut the article out and tape it to bedroom walls like a certificate. Proof that somebody flew something that mattered. At night the toy chest closes with a soft clap, the brass latch catching. The room stilled except for the tick of the clock and the hum of the house. In the dark, the powders wait as patiently as seeds. The BBs pool like mercury. The paper caps ride their spools like tiny rosaries. The instruction book sleeps with its face open. You stand in the doorway and understand that the chest is not malicious. It is generous and stupid and new. It offers 1,000 ways to learn and 12 ways to pay for the lesson with blood. In the morning the sun will find the metal bright again, and the labels cheerful and the hinges ready to give. Someone will shout, "Can we?" and someone will answer, "Be careful," and the day will begin. A match will strike, a switch will click, a wheel will turn, a hand will hover, hesitate, decide, breath will catch, a smell will bloom, a laugh will become a wince, will become a story that will be told for 50 years. How we nearly burned the garage down, how Tommy's eyebrow never grew back quite right, how the rocket we built with our own hands disappeared into the blue, and we swear we heard it land 2 towns over. The toy chest is a biography of a decade disguised as a box. Brave, reckless, dazzled by the new, willing to trade safety for wonder, certain that tomorrow belongs to those who are not afraid to light the fuse. And if you listen closely as you lower the lid, you can hear it still, the faintest grit of powder shifting in its paper nest, the tiny click of a spring settling, the sigh of a page that wants to be turned. The 1950s taught children to love the spark. It forgot to teach them how often the spark loves them back, and in what language. Open the refrigerator door, and the cold air rolls out, clean and bright in your memory. But the truth of the 1950s kitchen was never so pure. The shelves groan with abundance. This is the decade that promised never again to ration, never again to scrape at empty tins. Wrapped chickens gleam beneath fluorescent light. Canned goods shine in towers of tin. Margarine sits golden on porcelain plates. The dinner table looks safe, looks modern, looks better than anything your grandparents ever had. But progress in food moved as recklessly as it did in toys and furniture, and what families ate so proudly often carried danger with it. The chicken is the first betrayal. Raised in factory sheds that smell of ammonia and fear, fattened quickly on feed laced with chemicals, slaughtered in plants that cut speed over hygiene, the birds often carry salmonella like a shadow under their skin. Housewives rinse them in porcelain sinks, stuff them with herbs, slide them into new electric ovens that hum with confidence. The smell fills the house, golden skin, sizzling fat, the promise of prosperity. But no one sees the invisible bacteria that survives undercooked meat. No one suspects the gravy pooling on the plate might carry illness. Families gather around, carve thick slices, pour steaming juices, eat with delight. Hours later the cramps twist in stomachs, the fever rises, the house echoes with retching. It feels like bad luck. It is not. It is the cost of abundance. The cans are worse in their way. Rows of them line the pantry. Green beans, peaches in syrup, soups thick and salty, meat suspended in gelatin. The labels are cheerful, promising freshness trapped in tin, convenience stacked neatly behind cupboard doors. Housewives open them with new chrome openers, the lids curling back with a satisfying snap. They do not know that bulging cans hide botulism, that invisible toxin waiting in the darkness, strong enough to paralyze breath itself. One spoonful of soup, one bite of meat, and the family that trusted the miracle of preservation finds itself gasping, muscles refusing to move, doctors shaking their heads. The pantry does not look like a battlefield, but it claims its dead as surely as any trench. Then there is margarine, the yellow miracle spread across bread at every meal. Advertisements beam with smiling children, the knife gliding across slices of Wonder Bread, the promise of vitamins and strength. But the yellow is artificial, pressed from dyes that no one has tested long enough, from additives that shimmer with novelty more than with safety. In some factories, the coloring agents are little more than industrial leftovers, chemicals bright but not benign. The taste is cheap, the price lower than butter, the marketing irresistible. Families eat it daily, spreading a future across their toast one knife at a time. Years later, questions whisper about cancers, about strange sicknesses that trace back to additives consumed without suspicion. The warning labels never came. They would have spoiled the dream. The produce, too, carries secrets. Apples waxed with pesticides that linger on skin. Grapes sprayed until their sweetness is lined with bitterness you cannot taste. Farmers assured that chemicals mean bigger harvests, safer crops, less spoilage. Housewives wash fruit in porcelain bowls. Children bite into them with juice running down their chins. They do not see what coats the flesh, what slides into their bodies alongside the vitamins. Progress is invisible, tasteless, silent, and so is its shadow. At the dinner table, the family sits together under the glow of a new ceiling lamp. The father carves the chicken. The mother pours soup into bowls. The children clamour for a slice of bread thick with margarine. The plates look perfect, the meal abundant. From the street through the window, the scene is enviable. Post-war prosperity, the good life finally delivered. But inside the bodies of those smiling faces, toxins creep, bacteria multiply, chemicals root themselves quietly. The feast is not what it seems. It is a gamble disguised as a guarantee. Hospitals of the decade knew the aftermath. Children limp with fever after tainted poultry, neighbours poisoned by a single can of beans, whole families gasping from foodborne botulism. Doctors wrote reports, officials took notes, but the ads kept running, the factories kept churning. Progress could not pause for caution, not when shelves were finally full and the promise of plenty defined the age. And so the food kept coming, dressed in bright labels, hidden killers tucked neatly inside. You stand now in that kitchen of chrome and pastel, the refrigerator humming, the pantry neat, the table set. It looks perfect. It looks safe. It looks like everything the 1950s promised. But you know better. You know the chicken might carry sickness, the can might hide poison, the margarine might shimmer with chemicals no one bothered to test. You know the feast is a mask, and behind the mask waits hunger of another kind, one that consumes from within. And so the family eats, smiling, laughing, savouring the abundance. They do not see the danger, and they will not until it is too late. Progress serves them dinner, and death sometimes clears the plates. Electricity in the 1950s had the confidence of a salesman with perfect teeth. It strode into the house and promised to do everything: toast the bread, curl the hair, dry the laundry, wash the clothes, heat the blanket, polish the floor, sharpen the knife, churn the milk, power the mixer, sing the radio awake, and let light bloom with the flick of a switch. It was the hum in the walls, the miracle threaded into every socket, the invisible servant that never slept. Families trusted it the way they trusted sunrise. They did not yet know that the same current that made breakfast dance could turn on them at the speed of a heartbeat and the strength of a clenched fist. Start with the toaster, chrome bright and innocent on its little island of laminate. It stands on stubby rubber feet, a pair of slots like a grin, a lever that lowers the bread with a decisive click. Inside, wires glow hot, nichrome tightened into coils that remember the factory worker who pulled them taut with a pair of pliers and a cigarette in his mouth. Crumbs fall and nest against the filaments, little tinder squares. The cord's rubber jacket, once supple, stiffens with the kitchen's winter draft and summer heat. Mice explore cupboards, and like the taste of soft insulation, time likes it more. One morning the mother leans in to see why the smell is sweet and wrong, and the toaster answers with a faint pop and a ribbon of smoke that becomes a curtain. A spark bites the curtain fringe. The chrome reflects the beginning of fire like a witness who refuses to speak. The hairdryer sits like a pistol in a drawer of powder and bobby pins. It is heavy for its size, its cage metal, its motor a little turbine that snarls to life. In advertisements it lifts a curl into a halo, while a woman smiles at her reflection. In bathrooms it hums inches from a sink full of water. The cord is cloth wrapped or rubber cracked. The plug two little prongs without a third to ground their ambition. The house has no GFCI outlets, that small guardian angel that modern walls now hide to trip the current when water intervenes. In the 1950s there is only faith and habit, and the soft fog of steam. A hand slips, a dryer dives, the arc leaps like a snake across porcelain. The shock is as sudden as thunder at close range. Afterwards the mirror shows a face that cannot decide whether to be pale or red. The cord lies in the sink like a black eel, still. Down in the basement, the washing machine thumps like a large animal testing its cage. The concrete floor sweats. The air tastes of mineral and damp, and bare feet are an invitation. The machine promises simplicity, fill, agitate, rinse, ring. But simplicity hides a belly of wires wrapped in cloth, varnish cooked onto coils, a switch that arcs every time it is asked to decide. A bare toe touches a puddle, linked to a steel tub linked to a motor that wants to share its excitement, and all at once the basement turns into a lesson. Later someone will swear they saw a thin blue thread flicker between knob and palm, between machine and skin, a sewing stitch of lightning. The child who liked to watch socks tumble learns the word tingle first and the word fault second, and both words take root. The iron gleams like a hull-down ship. It breathes steam from a throat punched with holes. Housewives guide it across collars and pleats, hypnotized by the sibilant pissed as wrinkles kneel. The cord is a serpent coiled on the board's edge, its skin gone a little grey where it bends the most. On certain afternoons the plug's bakelite face gives a tiny hiss and exhale of hot phenol, a scent like medicinal licorice. No one wants to be the person who admits that smell scares them. Later, with the window open and the curtains shivering, there is a thin brown kiss on the board where the iron rested, a moment too long when the doorbell rang. Under that kiss, a perfect silhouette on the wood. The dog barks. The doorbell rings again. The iron remembers how to wake on its own. Extension cords are as plentiful as hope. They snake under rugs to lamps and Christmas trees, under sofas to radios, under doors to the porch, where a man sands a chair until he remembers being a boy. They are made of copper thin enough to sing, if stretched, and jackets thin enough to crack, if bent back on themselves more than a few dozen times. Multi-taps bloom from outlets like plastic flowers, pale ivory petals multiplying hot little mouths. You feed them all, because why not? There is a radio to play, and a heater to hum, and a lamp to help with the crossword, and a vacuum cleaner to chase dust into corners. Somewhere behind the baseboard, a wire wrapped in cloth, and good intentions warms until its shell is more memory than material. The heat climbs the grain of old wood like a ladder someone forgot to take down. If the fuse blows, a grandfather teethes a Lincoln penny into the slot, because he hates darkness and hates waste, and metal is metal, isn't it? The lights come back like a crowd cheering the wrong hero. Electric blankets feel like wizardry. You unfold warmth where none was. Tuck comfort into the coldest bed. Watch frost hesitate at the window and back away. The coil inside is a line of tiny embers stitched into fabric, and it wants to work forever. But beds are for tossing and turning, for knees to jab and heels to grind, and wires do not love being braided by accident. A kink hardens into a break wrapped in fuzz. A mouse nested in the attic last spring, and liked the taste of everything that tasted like salt and skin. The blanket hums a lullaby too soft to hear. A brow touches the pillow. The smell of scorching wool joins the cold air like a new ingredient. Some families wake in time, others don't, and the firemen, red-eyed at 3 a.m., learn the outlines of bedrooms, the way archaeologists learn the shape of vanished walls from the stain they leave in the earth. Mix water and electricity, and the stories get shorter. An electric razor finds the bottom of a sink and flashes like a camera from a dream. A radio perched on a bathtub rim leaps with delight at a soap slick elbow. The kitchen mixer purrs in a bowl the way a cat purrs in sunlight. Then a sleeve catches a whisk, and the cat shows its claws. The 1950s house does not apologize for this. It has given you the tools. It assumes you will learn their moods the same way farmers learned the weather. It does not post signs. It trusts your hands to memorize limits that were never written down. The walls themselves conspire, not out of malice, but out of chronology. Old neighborhoods have knob and tube wiring, braided through joists, like fossils of the first electrical age. New houses have Romex, with jackets bright as candy, and staples driven in too hard by men paid by the job. Splices hide in boxes with no lids, or in none at all, wrapped in tape the color of smoke. In winter the attic dries to tinder. In summer it softens like tallow, mice chew. Time abrades. Dust settles in drifts that remember fireplaces and coal stoves, and the first bread toasted under the broiler. When a spark finally convinces the dust to believe, it believes with missionary zeal. Fires that start in crawls and chases are the quiet kind until they aren't. They learn to climb faster than you can pronounce the word ventilation. If you want a single still life to understand the decade's faith in current, build a Christmas scene. In the corner stands an aluminum tree, new and shimmering, its branches combed silver against the window's night. At its base a color wheel spins under a heat lamp, painting the tree from green to red to blue, as if to prove that seasons are a theater and the house owns the stage. Strings of lights march up the stair rail, across curtains, along the mantelpiece, every glass bead a little throb of heat. The plug behind the tree gasps for space beneath 3 adapters and a felt skirt. The father squints at the tangle and smiles. He bought every strand himself, and each one is a promise to the children asleep upstairs. At 2 in the morning, the color wheel's motor stutters. The lamp stalls on an angle it does not like. The plastic rim softens as if embarrassed. The smell wakes the cat first. The cat swats at a branch that hisses. The branch, being aluminum, has opinions about conductance. The father wakes next to a light he cannot name. Kitchen knives get electric sharpeners. Floors get electric polishers. Cigarettes get electric lighters. Fences get electric chargers. That buzz to tell the world where the border is. Each machine arrives with a manual that believes its own breathless diagrams. Few of them mention that a wet autumn will make the garage outlet sweat, or that a polished floor is quicker under socks than knees are under reflex, or that an ash fleck can find an extension cord's crack, the way a flea finds fur. Few of them mention that grounding is not a word for sermons but for survival, that double insulation is not a mere boast but a treaty you want to be signed in your favour. Do it yourself is the gospel according to the hardware aisle. Men in white shirts and clean trousers lean over sawhorses in catalogues, glowing with competence. The weekend warrior buys a drill with a case that smells like new shoes and a scroll saw that sings like a siren. He rewires a lamp in the evening and forgets which wire was hot and which neutral because the cloth sleeves have aged to the same tired beige. He uses a strip of electrical tape that once sealed a baseball bat and believes in it because it sticks to his thumb as if in love. He splices an extra outlet into a box and tells himself he will add a cover later. Later is a neighborhood with no maps. When the shock comes, it is often small. A snap from a doorknob, a prickle from a microphone, a bite from a lamp switch that leaves a black apostrophe on the pad of a finger. These are the letters electricity writes to say, I am here. Sometimes it writes its name across a life with a thicker pen. An uncle fixes a radio on the kitchen table with the chassis live and his curiosity braver than his knowledge. The current runs arm to arm like a thief. A girl plugs a record player in with one hand on the basement pipe and hears the album she loves turn into a distant sound. The record keeps spinning because music and death have never had much to say to each other. The newspapers call it accidental electrocution and tuck it under the fold, where the word looks like a machine itself. The coroner writes faulty appliance on a line as narrow as a wire. Manufacturers send out bulletins that blame wear and dust, and improper use, which is to say they blame the human hand that believed. There are recalls sometimes, quiet as regret. There are lawsuits rarer than lightning. Mostly there are funerals whose flowers lean toward the open socket at the funeral parlour as if trying to understand what came out of it. And still the house hums, because hum is its nature. You walk through rooms in which current curls like a river, civilized, tamed, channeled into copper beds. You cannot see it, but your skin knows when it is near. Little hairs lift along your forearm when you pass a transformer hidden behind a wall. A sixth sense we pretend is nonsense. You learn the etiquette of chords and the prayer of switches. You touch metal first with the back of your hand because someone told you that trick and you never forgot the tone of their voice. You keep a flashlight in a drawer that sticks and you pretend that means you are ready. What the 1950s taught, brutally and repeatedly, is that the future is not gentle just because it is bright. The new gods demand respect in the old language. They do not accept worship without knowledge, and knowledge. In those houses, lagged behind glamour like a child, trotting to keep up with adults who walk too fast. Today we lace walls with interrupters that watch for leakage. We write warnings with ink thick as tar. We ground everything that dreams of metal. We wrap cords in hoses that laugh at teeth. But go back in memory to the chrome and the pastel and the brave little motors that sang, and you can hear beneath the music the other song, thin, steady, relentless, the sound of current looking for a way home through anything that will have it. The decade called electricity a miracle, and it was also a mouth that could bite as easily as it could feed. In the radio's hum and the toaster's glow and the washing machine's steady thump, you can hear both halves of the truth, convenience and risk braided so tightly they became a single cord, plugged into a wall that no one had yet learned to fear. The decade ends as it began, with a smile painted over a shadow. You stand outside a neat suburban house in 1959. The lawn trimmed, the mailbox shining, the pastel siding glowing in the afternoon sun. It looks perfect, doesn't it? The advertisements were right. Every home a castle, every kitchen a laboratory of progress, every living room a stage for comfort. Yet if you listen closely, you can hear the whisper of hidden killers humming inside those walls. The house is not just shelter, it is a glittering coffin, lined with conveniences that whisper promises while quietly sharpening their knives. Step through the door again, and the glow of the television washes over you. Families lean in, faces bathed in light, never suspecting that the box that entertains them could just as easily burn their house down. The couch is soft beneath them, foam eager to comfort, eager also to ignite with the ferocity of oil when a spark lands. A mother's dress gleams in the lamplight, nylon smooth and elegant, until flame meets fabric and elegance turns to agony. The air itself can betray. The heater in the corner hisses warmth into the room, invisible carbon monoxide creeping alongside it, filling lungs, silencing dreams. The kitchen dazzles with abundance, but every shelf is loaded with risks, can bulge with botulism, margarine glows with dyes pulled from industrial vats, poultry carries illness from farm to oven to plate, the cupboards hold powders in bright tins, chemical miracles stored beside sugar, indistinguishable in a child's hand. The refrigerator hums proudly, but the hum hides the truth. Progress is not safety. Abundance is not purity. Convenience is not without price. Upstairs, children play with chemistry sets that glitter with powders no one should touch, uranium ore samples that gleam faintly in the light, BB guns that crack with a force underestimated by parents who grew up with wooden toys. Laughter spills down the hallway, the sound of curiosity rewarded and sometimes punished. The toy chest of the 1950s is a carnival of dangers disguised as fun, and yet it sits in nearly every room where children dream of tomorrow. The wires in the walls hum with electricity, the proud new god of the modern age. It powers toasters that arc, hairdryers that spark, blankets that smoulder while families sleep. It does not apologize for its power. It simply waits for one misstep, one frayed cord, one puddle under bare feet. The current in those walls is patient and exact, ready to reward or ready to kill with the same invisible hand. Everywhere you look, progress glitters, shiny, cheap, abundant. The 1950s sold itself as the safest decade, the cleanest, the happiest. But when you strip away the advertisements, you see a different truth. You see fires started by televisions, families lost to heaters, scars from clothing that melted into flesh. You see cupboards filled with poison, pantries stocked with sickness, beds warmed by coils that sometimes burned hotter than hell itself. The decade's brilliance was undeniable, but so was its blindness. It rushed forward faster than caution, convinced that novelty itself was safety enough. You imagine standing in the middle of that living room now. The television hums, the couch sighs, the heater whispers, the children laugh upstairs, the kitchen ticks with appliances, the wires sing in the walls. It all feels alive, too alive, as though the house itself is watching you, daring you to notice the teeth beneath the smile. You can almost see the flames blooming, the powders spilling, the gases curling into corners. You can almost hear the silence after the laughter stops. The 1950s dream was built to dazzle, and it did. But hidden inside that dream were killers cloaked in pastel colours and chrome. Families stepped eagerly into their modern castles, and many never realized that they had been handed not safety, but risk wrapped in ribbons, progress, unchecked, made homes as dangerous as battlefields, and the casualties never made it into the advertisements. The glittering coffin of the decade still lingers in memory. It teaches one lesson, whispered in the smoke of burned couches, in the silence of carbon monoxide, in the scar tissue left by melted nylon. Progress without caution is another word for danger. You can light the lanterns, polish the chrome, shine the floors until they sparkle, but inside, the knives remain sharp, the wires remain frayed, the powders remain potent. The dream will always glow, but the glow does not guarantee safety. And so the house stands, quiet, gleaming, full of promise, full of threat. A monument to a time when optimism was sold by the pound and death slipped easily into the shopping basket. The 1950s were bright, but brightness does not always mean light. Sometimes it only blinds you long enough to keep you from seeing what waits in the shadows of your own home.